Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Classical Revolution here on IDAGIO. My name is Rachel Fenlon, and this is my weekly show here, chatting with weekly guests who inspire me, people who are really pushing the boundaries in classical music and asking the questions. And today I'm really thrilled to be joined by Lucy Dhegrae. Named as one of the 20 artists redefining what classical music can be by WQXR, Lucy Dhegrae is a vocalist, producer, and curator. She's committed to changing and challenging how vocal music can be perceived and performed. She's had artistic residencies with the National Sawdust. She makes her New York Philharmonic debut this year with a piece by Paola Prestini, as well as her debut with 92nd Street Y. She's performed at the Mostly Mozart Festival, the Bard Music Festival, as well as the Lincoln Center, Kennedy Center, to name a few. She has her own festival called the Resonant Bodies Festival in New York City, an amazing festival, as well as her own piano vocal duo called Ultra Fizz. Please welcome Lucy Dhegrae. So thrilled to have you here. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
Thanks
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So you're joining us from New York City, right?
That's right. Right downtown. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's just dive right in. I like to begin by asking my guests what their earliest introduction to music was and whether there was a particular musical moment that sort of sparked your lifelong passion for music.
So it is a kind of family myth that I went as a week-old infant with my mom to her choir rehearsal. She was a big community choir member. And I just remember singing with my family kind of forever. I had fabulous music teachers. I grew up in Lansing, Michigan, and Michigan is full of music, folk music, R&B, blues, jazz, everything. So I was really, really lucky. Singing was a big part of just growing up, making up songs, harmonizing, whistling. I have an older sister, and my mom, my sister and I would do little trios, and we were all really good at, I don't know, just, making stuff up. I started piano lessons very young, like 3, before I could read. Never really learned how to read music, to be honest. I always played by ear. And I joined my church choir at age 7, though I was singing before that. And Stephen Lang, the choir director there, was a big influence on me musically, my first voice teacher. I think you're a singer as well. So and you interview a lot of singers, so we can talk a lot about what it means to get training as a singer. But one thing I really value about my early singing teachers was that they always respected me as a musician, and they always encouraged me to be a musician. And I always left my voice lessons happy and feeling like I could do it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that early kind of empowerment and respect really probably had a big impact on me.
Yeah. And what kind of led you, now a lot of what you do artistically is in the realm of new music. And what was the journey like getting there? Curious.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I wasn't planning to be a singer really for a long time. I was like, oh, this is a fun thing that I'll do kind of on the side. And I was always dual degree in undergrad until like my last year of college. I went to University of Michigan, and it's a huge music school, and every music school has so many singers, too many singers, honestly. But on one hand, it was a really rich environment of singers to learn from, and musical theater and classically trained singers, and we were all mixing together, I guess. And my teacher had a lot of musical theater students, so that is awesome now that I live in New York City and I can see them on Broadway and things like that. But I felt, an implied comparison with my voice and other singers' voices, and being a very young singer, that just was totally demoralizing. singing Achilles next to DMA students or master's students who were, you know, in their 30s, and just being like, this is, I feel horrible. You know, I feel like I'm not, one, I don't sound good. Two, I'm not standing out. No one knows anything about me. And if people are going to judge me by how well I sing Achilles, then, you know, I'm gonna either give up because I'm gonna have no confidence, or I'm never gonna get hired for anything. So I was lucky that, again, my teacher, Melody Racine at University of Michigan, the only time she ever gave me repertoire, so to speak, was one time when I specifically asked her for it, and she wrote like 5 songs down on a little tiny sticky note. Other than that, she encouraged me and allowed me to find my own repertoire, and the University of Michigan library was vast. And I, after a while, you know, you would hear songs other people do and you do them. And after a while, I just went in and just pulled anything off the shelf that I had not heard someone else do. Because I was like, I do not want to do something that someone else has done. I was like, this looks like a dusty score. Let me just get this one. And then I would get the recording as well, and, you know, kind of have a little library time. I was in the library all the time. And so I got to know a lot of just off the beaten path repertoire. I listened constantly. I just took out any singer I could, you know, any composer. I was like, oh, let me get to know, you know, this work. And so I graduated from undergrad with like a super long rep list, just because I dabbled and I learned music quickly. So I would say that's where I got the itch, I guess. I think choosing to do it as a career aligned with just what I was interested in. I didn't want to be part of like a historical performance in a way, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, I'm not, you know, who is this Bellini song really written for? It's written for an Italian person living in the 19th century, right? I am an American living in the 21st century. So what repertoire, what songs am I uniquely positioned to do something with? And how am I uniquely positioned to have an impact on where music is going? And also, how can I best use my voice? And what I learned over time was my voice did not fit into the classical repertoire at all. I had a wide range, but not a timbre that matched a typical barcode, right? I wasn't barcoded in as a lyric mezzo or a lyric soprano. It just kind of had mismatching parts, really. And so I just failed in that world. I never get anything, you know, if I auditioned for things, which was great, because it was like, do not go there. And I don't think I would have done well in that world, you know, with the values that I have and the way that I like to work. So yeah, so I you know, I want to be a part of shaping the future of music, and personally me being a part of that. How can I creatively be a part of that and have, you know, real collaborations with individuals, one-on-one work. So I love working with composers. I love collaborating with instrumentalists and really bringing my creativity to the work that I do.
I love that. I really love that. This idea, I mean, also, I think it's particularly unique as a vocalist, because often in the structure of classical music, we're kind of a little bit lower down on the sort of pole or ladder of getting to have a creative opinion. And so I love that kind of autonomy that you've taken and said, I want to have an impact, because often that's not our role. So it's something I really admire about you.
Thanks.
There's a really cool interview that anyone watching should check out as well, of yours on New Music USA, and something you said in that really struck me, which was this idea that it's important to express the beauty and the ugliness in the voice. And I was just wondering if you could talk about your first interaction with that, and like whether now that's something that you always seek in music, or whether that's, if that's a part of your process in choosing new repertoire and choosing commissions, is looking for that kind of, you call it like an all-encompassing sound from the voice, and not just the beautiful bel canto or something.
I'm trying to think of what my first interaction with as a performer on stage making bel canto sounds, you know,
Right.
I don't know. But I can tell you I was really into like death metal as like a teenager.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I you know, started with Rage Against the Machine and got darker, harder, kind of more noisy, you know. There's something what I love in any music is genuine expression that is tied to a really deep place in your body, in your soul. And a lot of, not to be hard on classical music, but, you know, since I am here in the industry, a lot of classical music has an emphasis on virtuosity. And,
yes.
right. And how do you develop virtuosity with a lot of time sitting in a small room, you know, shedding, right? Or God-given gift or something like this, which is, I think, a myth. So I really value genuine expression that it has no filter on it, and expression that is not like, has like a selfie camera on it, which I think a lot of singers do. It's like you're listening to yourself and trying to sound beautiful as you're singing, and not just singing from your soul. So that's really what I'm going for. And I think if you're going to get on a microphone and really scream from your guts words, you have to really mean them. And so in like death metal, I think I really connected with that immediacy of expression, you know?
Right.
As far as when I kind of got to, you know, screaming in a microphone as a singer, not that often, to be honest. But, you know, I have this vocal cord condition called paresis, which when I'm under duress weakens the connection in my vocal cords, because it's affects both sides of my vocal cords. The nerves, it's kind of like a tube for the gas. Like it just doesn't transmit the gas as fast as a normal functioning nerve would. And so I have had times in my singing where my voice just didn't do what it was trained to do. And I was left with a palette of sounds that, you know, it was trained out of me to like, right?
Interesting.
And so I have learned to love my own voice, first of all, love it however it's sounding, whether it sounds tired, whether it sounds raspy, whether it sounds easy, you know, and I've had to really embrace my full voice, which is something I think a lot of us don't do if we're classically trained. It's like we literally cut off all of this expression and all of these parts of ourselves, and we only show the audience this tiny little slice when we're perfect, right? So, and I'm not interested in, I also, as a listener, am not interested in singers where that is their first priority.
Yeah.
Is sounding beautiful all the time. And I've gone to all the recitals of all the best singers, basically, and people who that's their first priority, it's beautiful for about 10 minutes. And then it's not, you know. If you're in an opera, it's different, right? Because other people are going to sing and da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, for opera, like, that's its own thing, right? Opera lovers are allowed to like whatever they want to like. But I think if you kind of look at, like, for you, I'm not sure who the artists are who you really look up to, but one person that I really look up to and has been a mentor of mine is Dawn Upshaw. And she cares about, I mean, she has a beautiful voice, right? Amazing recordings and amazing live performer. But she really cares about text, and she really cares about collaboration, and she really cares about the composers and all these other aspects. And she's not selfie camera singing, right? And so that's who I feel like I'm I identify with, and these kinds of singers, right? And certainly in the classical music world, there are other singers who identify with, you know, power, virtuosity, tone, evenness, flexibility, right? Like those aren't my tricks, but my tricks are genuine connection to what I'm singing, a real voice, text, collaboration, creativity, and trying to just not be a jerk in the world. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
No, but it's so true. I mean, now, like when you just said that, and I thought, okay, you know, who would that singer be for me? And the first person in my head is Jesse Norman, and it's also for this reason, because it's so imperfect, you know. I mean, not okay. She's a goddess, and but there's something so raw about it. She's willing to definitely make those sounds that no one. I mean, she can make those sounds that no one else can make anyway, but
she has a superhuman voice.
She is a superhuman.
And
but that it's that guttural singing that comes just from that desire.
Yes, and you don't feel that she's futzing with it.
No.
You know, as it's coming out. It's just coming out because she's singing.
Yes.
Yes, and it's this kind of artistry that I am really drawn to as a curator and as a singer myself.
Yeah. So. Something I love about your work is that you really have this ability, it seems, to kind of dance between genres. I mean, so you do new music, but there's sometimes like listening to your stuff, there's sometimes a folk element, there's sometimes like a musical or pop element, and then there's a classical element. And in a way, it seems that what you do, or who your artistic sort of identity isn't really genre bound. And I was wondering if that is something that you're conscious of, if that's something that you have chosen.
Yeah, I would say I chose it, and I'm like, it's great to hear someone say that that's what they get from me, because I think that was the reason I started Resonant Bodies Festival, and it was something that I wasn't willing to compromise, was being put in a box and having to choose. You're this kind of a person or this kind of a singer, and so part of the idea of Resonant Bodies Festival was that. I'm sorry for the street noise. Someone's backing up on 6th Avenue. The idea of Resonant Bodies Festival was that I would give everyone, myself included, the opportunity to choose things that they wanted to sing. And for me, that for the first time that we did it in 2013, I wanted to show the wide spectrum of things that I did, because they're all ways that I like using my voice, right? And I have a really wide taste in music just as a human.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't like picking and choosing, but I do like, and I do kind of like the flexibility that my voice can bring. I like doing amplified music. I like doing unamplified music. Frankly, I like doing amplified music better, just because it gives me a lot more flexibility with volume, you know, and again with paresis, like volume is sometimes an issue if I'm having to push over an ensemble. So I mean, to me, where I see the future of classical singing going is that they're really, from what I see working with composers, is that they're going to be composers who are writing for amplified voice and classically trained amplified voice, which is kind of a new genre. And classical singers who work unamplified. And I really think that singers, frankly, should learn to identify themselves as one or the other or both, because so many classical singers do not understand singing into a microphone, and more we have to do this. And composers don't understand writing an opera where all your singers are going to be mic'd. And casting that. And what kind of singers sound good on a mic that's sitting right here when you're classically trained. I mean, it's literally, you're trained to be heard at a distance, and we're being mic'd like this. So we have to come up with voices that sound good in that medium. Sorry, I got a little like off topic there.
No, but it's an important note, because I mean, I mean, I don't know about you, but that was magnified during the last 6 months in the pandemic and trying to create content and being like, oh, this is a medium I actually don't know and really feel familiar with.
Yeah.
And unless you're a studio recording artist, I think you don't get that experience, but you're absolutely right that that's for sure changing.
What classical singer is a studio trained recording artist?
That as well. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That person doesn't exist. I mean, literally, like
Yeah.
I know a couple people who know how to record, but very few classical singers who have really good recordings, right?
Yeah.
Like Dawn Upshaw
Yeah.
has amazing recordings.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot since then. You know, I don't think that people know, as a singer who's worked in the studio, I haven't really worked with people who know how to work with the voice. It's a very particular way that we need to get feedback and hear ourselves and be able to listen back as we're recording. So anyway, that's like a whole passion of mine.
Interesting.
Is recording, and actually Resonant Bodies is doing a 3-part workshop starting this Saturday on recording for singers. So yes, at 2:00, it's free. You can go to resonantbodiesfestival.org, click on the info sessions, and I really encourage everyone to sign up, because
I think I probably will sign up for that then.
Please do. Yeah, all the questions that you want to know, like how far should I stand from the microphone? You know, what is gain? Like all these questions. What do I do if I only have an iPhone? You know.
Also, like, not to mention the technical questions of support. I mean, I find that the hardest thing is giving just the right amount in the microphone, but then you're not supporting, and you get tired faster.
Right. Yeah. Should you be listening back? Should you not? Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But it's good that you talk about Resonant Bodies, which you founded in 2013. And I mean, you've already sort of said the impulse of why you started the festival. And I'm curious what tools you feel like you've gained and how that's evolved for you, becoming a curator, and then what tools like that you've gained as an artist or as a performer from that, how that you sort of like interweave into your artistic life.
Well, as I curated, I learned what I liked, you know. I learned so much from being a curator. Resonant Bodies Festival is also ending. I just have to say that for all of the fans out there, right? So this fall was supposed to be our last festival because of COVID.
Wow.
We won't do a last festival. We're closing the 501c3. Who knows? We might have like a reunion festival somewhere down the road, but the 501c3 is closing, and the organization is dispersing and kind of moving on, which is an artistic decision for me as as Resonant Bodies got bigger, and as we did it more and more, and as my own career started kind of coming up, obviously they came into conflict with each other, but I think more importantly, just artistically, I'm at a different place in my life right now. So, but yeah, I mean, I learned so much from the singers in the festival, the performers in the festival. I learned a lot about, being on the receiving end as a producer. I learned that the people who are really at the top of their careers are not only amazing performers with great art, but they are also nice people who treat other people around them with absolute respect. They answer emails on time. They are professional. They show up on time. All of those things, like those are really the top artists. And so just to see them in action, when they're juggling huge projects, but they don't take 2 weeks to reply to an email about something. So as a young performer, I think that was informative in some way. Also to see how we always treating singers right and respecting them and providing an environment where they could flourish and do their best work was always our top priority. And being able to, as much as we could within a budget, basically support a singer's vision and really give them flexibility was great. And so I got to kind of see singers push for their ideas, right? and not compromise things and not go, oh, well, if you want it this way, you know, people who came in with very clear visions.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to compromise. And it wasn't bad, you know, it wasn't negative in any way. It was just like, this is what I want to do. So let's make it happen. No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. It's going to be this way, you know?
Yeah.
And that taught me a lot about how to kind of carry forward a vision in a way that is not egotistical, but just clear. I think, again, as singers and in the classical music world, you're usually working in a very large format, unless you're doing voice and piano, right? But as a you know, freelance singer, I hardly do voice and piano unless I'm working with my one duo partner. I'm always doing a large ensemble or a large, you know, an opera. That's like the largest ensemble, like heaviest lift of the classical music world. There's sometimes more people involved in making the opera than there are people in the seats, which is crazy. But to do that kind of work, you have to get along with people, right? And so in the training, this getting along with people and going with the flow is very encouraged, to the point where I think we don't have many artists who really have singular visions, because we have a lot of people who are yes men, who are kind of like helping make this larger thing work, right? Yeah. So how to come out of that when that is kind of your training. Yeah.
And so oh yes, no, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, so you creating a space to facilitate that is huge.
Yeah. And some singers, that was like one of their first experiences. They've never been asked to create a project. Some singers, you know, that's all they did was create their own projects. And to just put those, you know, what was so special sometimes was just like putting 3 artists on a night together who didn't know each other, but I loved all of their work. And I thought, man, these 3 singers, when they see each other, their minds are going to be blown, you know? And just being so excited to kind of introduce people that way. And I love it when things, when the pace is changing quickly, you know, so musically, right? So that was kind of, that was Resonant Bodies. And as an artist, I learned so much about just not compromising your vision and going with your gut, not being afraid to try things out. Yeah.
Amazing. Last year you were artist in residence at the National Sawdust Festival.
At National Sawdust, yeah.
Just National Sawdust, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
And you programmed this very powerful series, which was called the Processing Series, a concert series that explores how music can address the aftermath of trauma. And I thought this was a really amazing series and a thing to take on, and you commissioned 4 composers for this project. And I'm so curious to hear about what that process was like, or rather, how, what did that experience ultimately show you and your audiences? I mean, what was the sort of kind of arc of that, and what was, you know, I mean, what lessons did you get or discoveries?
Yeah, well, the series was cut short by 2 concerts because
of COVID. Okay. I didn't know that.
No, it's okay. So I only got to do 2. I was going to do my 3rd one at the end of March, and I would say the COVID shutdown was, you know, around the beginning of March. So I hope I'll still be able to continue it. But that series, okay, so I'll try to give you the fast version of how I came up with this series. After the first Resonant Bodies Festival in 2013, I was extremely vocally exhausted, waited a month to go to the doctor. Early October, I went to Dr. Peek Woo, who I think is an amazing ENT in New York City. And I had never seen what I would say like is a real singer's ENT. I had seen kind of like people who are ENTs who see like just regular people, not professional voice users. And I told him what was going on, and he used a specific kind of scope of one with a strobe light on it, that showed the movement of the vocal cords, not just like the edges of the vocal cords, because everyone's just looking for nodules. So that's when I was diagnosed with paresis. And we didn't know how it had happened or how long I had had it, right? Because paresis, I didn't feel that it was suddenly coming on. So I went back and looked through my medical records and did a lot of reading and had an intuitive sense, and through my reading confirmed this, that it was probably related back to a sexual assault that I experienced 10 years prior as a freshman in college and had not talked about since then. And it was the closing of the statute of limitations in Michigan, which is you have 10 years to report a rape, specifically rape. Not many other crimes have a statute of limitations. And so I think with that statute of limitations closing, my throat was also just like, and the truth I think was coming up and I was trying to block it because I had decided that I was not going to focus on this trauma that happened to me because I didn't want to make my whole life about that. And I really wanted to just move on, and I didn't want to go to court, and I didn't want to have to do that whole thing. I didn't want them pulling up my whole sexual history as an 18-year-old, all the reasons. And I didn't want to be trashed by University of Michigan and by, he was an athlete, blah, blah, blah. So at that point, I was 27. And I had to decide, okay, I've been diagnosed with this disability, essentially. Like, do I have physically what it takes to have a professional career? Because it was really just beginning. And it was either, well, go for it and try and you'll fail and at least you'll have tried, or go for it and try and you'll succeed and then you'll have the life that you wanted. So I really, at that point, I knew at some point I was going to have to process what happened to me through my singing voice, because it was my singing voice that I lost and not my speaking voice. And so it was then in 2013 that I had this idea that I would somehow sing about it. I didn't know what that meant. And so over really 7 years, I developed this idea for the processing series. And it went through many, many, many changes. And I really have to thank Allison Moritz, the wonderful director that I worked with on the project, for being there, for encouraging me, for reading, for workshopping this with me. So, I just had some amazing collaborators throughout the process, and also got to a point where we put the whole show together, kind of like the first draft, put it on its feet, and everyone saw it and we were all kind of like, ugh, this isn't really, now that I see it, this isn't really what I want to do. And then I had to kind of go back to the drawing board, and then the processing series as it is now at National Sawdust is what I ended up with. What I wanted to focus on, I guess, what you want, I think, for anyone who has experienced trauma and is in the process of healing what that does, which is it severs your body into pieces, right? And your job is to put them together into a cohesive one, right? Which is literally a lifelong challenge. No one is going to get through that challenge. Everyone lives in a fragmented self, right? We're all trying to get back to this. It's not just if you identify as a trauma survivor or not, you can identify with wanting to be a cohesive self. And so, so it looks at that journey, but I didn't want to just tell that story one way, because I knew over those 7 years that my experience and how I related to what happened to me changed hugely. And I didn't want to just get the chance to tell the story once. So the processing series, I hope, continues, who knows, the rest of my life. I don't know how many processing series shows there will be, but I wanted to expand the idea of trauma recovery, not condense it, right? I want to look at it from many angles. I want to involve other people in the shows. I want to tell more stories than just mine, but also mine. I want to get all my weird ideas out there, So it's been an amazing experience. It's connected me with so many people. I was already involved with RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network. I'm a speaker with them. I've been a speaker with them since 2013. And connected me with researchers, with therapists, friends, certainly lots of people who have come out to me about their own experiences. So, and really merging two parts of myself, two public facing parts of myself, one which was an advocate for victims of sexual violence, and one which was as a performer, and taking those fragmented selves and putting them together on stage. So it's been a hell of a journey. I will just say that. I mean, yeah.
It's just so amazing. I mean, amazing isn't the right word. It's astounding, actually, that you did that, and it's so brave and courageous, and it really, yeah, it's.
Thanks.
And I am curious, like, for those of us who weren't there at these two performances, but how that felt with the audience as well. I mean, it must have been also a very interesting or intense experience for the audience. And
you know, I don't know what it's like for the audience.
Yeah, of course.
People tell me. The kind of trick of doing this kind of art, which is very personal, is that you don't want it to have this kind of halo around it of protection, and to people to treat you like you're fragile, or to treat you like you can't receive any feedback. At the same time, it is very personal, and you do have to set certain boundaries with people about advice or, you know, ideas that you're willing to take, but that's true of all art.
Yeah.
I think it is intense. I also try to do what I can to prepare people for what they're going to see. I'm not just recreating violence, but I'm also not avoiding violence. I'm not avoiding hard things that are, you know, hard things that I feel like I need to show, but I'm also not like putting them in your face, right? So for the second show, a friend of mine, Heidi Schall-Yoder, actually, who's a yoga instructor and getting her training as a therapist, did a kind of grounding workshop with people. So about 25 minutes of exercises to teach you to connect with your body, and also safe ways to dissociate if you need to during the show. And Rain actually mailed us some stress balls, so she kind of worked with those. So we really tried to give people tools that, you know, if you want to see the show, but you're afraid of it kind of triggering you, or, you know, getting too intense, things that you can do while you're watching the show, which I hope no one has to use, but I'm also not, you can't, as an artist, you can't be afraid of offending people or hurting people's feelings, right?
Or discomfort.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I tell people at the beginning of the show, like, these are the exits. And, you know, I know that my audience is survivors of sexual violence, a lot of them, you know, and I know that some of them, it's uncomfortable, and I want people to watch. I think it's also uncomfortable to watch someone, to look at a human and be like, wow, that horrible thing happened to them, right? But I want people to see the transformation as well.
Right.
But a horrible thing has happened to literally everyone that you look at on the street. We just don't think about that. But I think that's what we're starting to realize as humans, is that kind of everyone has gone through really horrible shit. And we should all be nicer to each other at the very least, you know? So
at the very least. And then, you know, and so you've really taken this role or responsibility, but, you know, as musicians, we can create that space for people to process that as well. And I think it's,
I hope so. You know, I think we have to be careful about kind of, in a way, staying in your lane. You know, it's not therapy what I'm doing, it's a concert. But, you know, like, what is the magic of music, and what is the magic of a concert hall? It literally is a safe space, right? We go there because we want to enter a world. We're willing to sit and listen. So as a performer, you have a certain power, and a special power that people are granting you, and you get their attention. So what are you going to do with it? I think that's really important. But also, you know, I'm trying to just make good concerts, you know. I'm not out to have a pity party. I'm not out to have a therapy session. I'm trying to have an awesome musical experience that is deeply connected to to me, and it's meaningful to me, and there are lots and lots of layers to what's going on. But hopefully at the top layer, just music that's good, it gets a 10, you know, and I would not do something otherwise. So
yeah. How political do you feel as an artist? Do you feel, I'm talking to some guests on the show, you know, it's that they feel very much as a musician that we have a political responsibility, and some feel completely the opposite, and that it's, and I'm just wondering where you stand on that spectrum.
I mean, again, when as a singer, you are given text and a voice and a stage and an audience that is going to listen. So whether or not you want to be political, what you do at that time and that space says a lot about your priorities and who you are, right? So you can say you're not political, but that's political, right? It's like, that's kind of, for some people that they don't have to be political, right? Because maybe they're white, maybe they're privileged, right? So I think what I'm interested in as an artist is asking questions on stage, and I'm not interested in lecturing my audience. I'm pretty sure my audience also isn't interested in being lectured to, right? I think we have to think about a concert experience like to a conversation, and I have these conversations all the time, I'm sure you do too, everyone has them, where someone is trying to get something out of you, or someone's not listening to you and they just want to tell you something, and immediately you just turn off. You don't want to listen to that person, you have nothing to say to that person. And so if as an artist you go into a concert with something that you want the audience to know, or you want to fix them in some way, or like, you know, and there's that kind of focus there, they're going to feel that. And as an audience member, when I feel that from someone, I kind of turn off. But if I feel that the performer has an open energy and they're receiving my energy, then I give it to them. And I feel that there's this exchange, right? So I think no matter what you're doing, whether it's political, I call everything topical, right? So are you doing topical art? That it's important that you still ask questions genuinely on stage. You don't know what the experience is going to be. You have prepared the pieces, obviously, but you really are there to inquire. I think everyone can get behind that.
I love that. Yeah. What does, I mean, we've covered so many things because questions sort of cover themselves. But I'm curious when you felt like you took the biggest risk on stage, or that's and what that showed you and what that felt like.
Well, there are risks that fail.
Oh yeah, sure. And those are the ones I know the best.
And then there are risks that don't fail. And I have learned from both of those. And luckily, the ones that failed, people didn't remember as much or weren't as public, maybe, because I did them earlier on. I don't know. But sorry, I keep kicking the cord on my computer. Big risks. I mean, the processing series, I think, was a huge risk. Felt like the first time that I had really exposed myself, not only, I mean, I'm kind of triple exposing myself, not only as a survivor of sexual violence, not only as a singer with paresis, because I talk about it very openly, also as a creator, you know, and I'm not sure which of those is more terrifying to behold, to be, you know, to be looked at as a rape survivor, to be looked at as someone with a disability, or to be looked at as someone who made a stinky piece of art. I think probably the latter is my biggest fear, you know, so I think that moment when you really put something precious to you of your own creation on stage and you share it with the world, and it's vulnerable and you're vulnerable, and then people don't like it, you know, and you get feedback, and then you learn that you actually don't give a crap about what anyone else thinks, that you're going to do what you want to do because it matters to you and it matters to a few people, and you actually don't care about like 99.99% of the world's stupid opinion. And do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
But it was going through the cycle of, I've gone through that cycle many times. And I finally feel like I mean, it's still terrifying to put something on stage, but I don't wonder if I'm a good artist. I don't wonder if I have a right to be there. I don't, you know, wonder or care who's going to like it necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say in the process of making my series for Sawdust, I grew the most.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, also being a curator and curating nights of the festival that people had opinions about. And you're like, yeah, make your own festival. This is my festival. I don't know. If you want it a different way, you know? Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about that.
Yes. No, I'm right there with you. No, it's super inspiring to talk to you, and really refreshing in so many ways. And yeah, I was already a huge fan, but now I'm even more a fan. So
thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I checked out your stuff too. You're doing cool things, unheard of things. So congrats to you, and keep
just doing what you want to do and doing it.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. I'll ask you one last question, which is the question I always close with, and that's how and when can music be revolutionary?
I think revolution is an individual moment, which becomes a collective moment. And we all have to think about how our own revolutions get started, right? So when I think about that for myself, it's these big awakenings. It's allowing a feeling or a voice that you didn't allow before. And, you know, like in your personality, you have many parts of you, right? But a few of them are really running the show. And there can be a change in power inside you, right? And who gets to speak and who gets to make decisions. And so you have to allow yourself to feel. You have to allow yourself to be touched. And to allow yourself to feel means that you have to be supported, and you have to, you know, you also have to be desperate, right? You have to be on the edge, really. I feel like I have gotten to that moment personally just a couple times in my life, but enough to be like, no more. We cannot go forward this way. We have to go forward this way, right?
Yeah.
So music to me has the power to touch that part in someone that will open something that has not been opened yet. And we come to music in this ritual where we want to be moved. We want to be touched. We want to be challenged. We want to feel. And I think people allowing themselves to have feelings that they haven't had before is what will lead to revolution. So I think kind of all music has that power, and we actually have the space to do it. Our audience comes for that reason. So we have a mandate to deliver them with honest expression that connects to that place of transformation from us. So if you have not had that as an artist, then you cannot deliver it. So as an artist, you have to seek that within yourself. So yeah, that's my answer.
Wow. That's so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Lucy, for coming on the show. It was really great to have you. And for everyone who tuned in, Lucy's playlist will be available probably tomorrow, and a link to the episode, and definitely check it out. It's got a lot of variety of different beautiful and fabulous, inspiring music. So until next week, and thank you again, Lucy, so much.